after 80 years. The government in place then accepted that the apartheid constitution that excluded the owners of the land could no longer carry the union. And they went into a meeting, they went into a transitioning. That's what we're insisting must happen now. To go into a transitioning to rework the constitutional basis of Nigeria. And if you want to know what has to be done in that reworking, you go back to that preamble. Can we identify who the we is that is federating? That we in the interpretation and understanding of NINAS, and of course all of those who are familiar with the jurisprudence of constitution making, that we are the owners of the sovereignty that are submitting their lands and their peoples into a union. It is that we, the Yoruba in Yoruba land, we the Ijaw in Ijaw land, Ogoni on Ogoni land, Tiv on Tiv land. These are the constituent components of Nigeria. The people that were brought together by the fiat of Britain in 1914. These are the people who should be federating. And so you must identify them. You then go to whether they want to be in union, and then if they have to be in that union, on what terms. Those are the things. And it can only, if we call that meeting today, it won't take more than 10 months, 12 months. It could go to 18 months. For us to put aside, there will be a nominal government in place, like Frederick de Klerk remained in South Africa. In all the 5 years, Kodesa was reworking the basis. That's what we're asking to be done. We're not anarchists. And if anybody is thinking that it is by brigandage, because this constitution was imposed by military fiat, by brigandage. We had a federation that was toppled, and then the carcass of the federation was held together by force, and then those who gathered it have been operating in the name of Nigeria that excludes the owners. Ijaw is crying, Ogoni is crying, Yoruba is threatening to leave, Middle Belt is being slaughtered. All of them flowing from that constitution. How long are we going to retain it? And so when they began to go towards another election that will renew the life of that constitution, because the winner of that election will have to swear to govern by and defend that constitution, meaning that we're going to have these agitations that are all over the place continuing. We're going to have corruption growing. We're going to have infrastructure decaying further. We're going to have, impunity, rubbing us on the face. And so we say, can't we all reason together instead of allowing this thing to burst like it's busting in some other? We saw Yugoslavia, these same issues. We saw the places where governments are being toppled. What happened on February the 25th, 2023? Can anybody differentiate it from a coup? The people went out to vote. The outcome is known to everybody. And then somebody had been imposed as president. The whole world is telling, we took out, a position, a global caveat. And we told the whole world that the candidate that had been declared winner has not met the minimum constitutional requirement. And at the end, the people that are imposing him on us are just asking us to go to court. The candidate that won the election has gone to court. In all of that, what is the difference between the coup of toppling the will of the people as expressed in election, much as NINAS had advised against that election? Now they've gone there, and somebody is now going to stand on that constitution for another 4 years to continue to ruin the lives of people. You see what they're already doing. The subsidy, nobody's talking about how to solve any problem. They are talking about how to share money. Position.
Sorry, Mr. Nadeem.
I want to say that it is the transitioning we are talking about is very clearly spelled out for how it starts to finish, how it can be done. If we refuse to do it, people are going to get so pressured in their inability to live their life without electricity, without petroleum products, with corruption that they see every day, and they see the people doing it. And the Constitution actually forbids anybody from questioning those people in Section 308, immunity. So what there is going to come to where it will burst open. When it bursts, it's going to be a much bigger problem. Why can't we come now instead of heading to the rerun they're talking about? Because I'm sure they know that they cannot, if they attempt to retain the candidate they have declared the winner as president, it will be in defiance of that constitution. We're already tolerating that constitution only for a limited purpose. We want the constitution out of the way, but we're not anarchists. And so we say, let us hold on to it until we go to that meeting like South Africa did to ease out apartheid constitution. It couldn't get any simpler than this. And we've taken we've taken this campaign to all the stakeholders, even outside Nigeria. We went to the UN. They sent a rapporteur that came to tell Nigeria that the killings, the situation of Nigeria is flowing from the constitutional arrangement that functions like pressure cooker for injustice. We went to Capitol Hill. The US was troubled enough to place Nigeria on the watch list because terror that was growing was now breeding in our space. It is that terror that we went to raise the alarm in 2019 that has now, become basis for all of what you saw in that map. People who stood up to say it can continue, and it's next to our space. If anybody thinks that Niger is so far away that it can't come here, you saw when it happened in Tunisia. You saw how quickly it spread all around the belt there. We're on the front line of that situation now. Our people must get a little more honest. Nothing will change. Those 10 points of interrogatories, I wish we could get into them so that
yes,
we can
I can display those 10 points, but now taking those points you highlighted were directly
that will not change, that our listeners will follow. The things that will not change in Nigeria under this constitution, no matter who is president, those 10 points, we wanted the media people to tackle the candidates as they were going to the election. Those who say they're going to bring rule of law, it's not possible under this constitution. Those who say they're going to give us economic production that will replace consumption, it's not possible. Those who say they're going to kill corruption, it's not possible. So we placed it and we are pointing at the provisions and contents of the constitution that are directly responsible, like the tap that from which these things are flowing. We will be dishonest if we do not address ourselves to question of turning off the tap instead of mopping. We've been mopping for 24 years. It hasn't gone anywhere. With Ninas is saying, let us turn off the tap. Otherwise, people are going to die in large numbers if the matter explodes by itself. And it's heading to explosion. I don't know how long they can hold these hungry people across this land from coming to challenge what they see as deliberate attempt to exterminate them. It's become a potential threat. So we can go to those 10 points, very quickly. We are talking to labor.
Sorry. Before we get to the 10 points, there are, I believe many people listening to you now, right. And I believe as that point, the 10 points from June 2022 was directed to the obedience, right? That's
all the parties, we put it in Guardian newspaper, addressed to all the political parties heading to election under the 1999 Constitution. We were telling them that no matter who wins amongst them, these things will not change. These provisions of the Constitution will not change. Therefore, the problems we are promising we're going to solve, we're not going to be able to solve it. The president is not going to be able to, take us away from being 36 states or 704 local government areas. Beyond his powers. He can't even touch one alphabet in the Constitution. And it's not even the business of the National Assembly. Some people in their ignorance say, go to National Assembly. That National Assembly is a product of that imposition called Constitution. And so we're saying, let us accept that we have a problem that is foundational. Then let us work out how to work ourselves out of that problem. The 10 points of interrogation was addressed to the parties that were going to that election. And now we have seen one of them emerge. All of them promised they were going to remove subsidy. You see what one has done. And the other people cannot find their voice anymore because they all promised they were going to remove subsidy. They promised rule of law. Under which constitution are you going to have rule of law? Was there rule of law in South Africa under the apartheid constitution for the black? That's how it sounds like in my ear. It sounds illiterate for anybody to say, the lawyers in the land particularly, who know the meaning of rule of law. What is the rule? What kind of rule of law can you have in an apartheid, something that is worse than apartheid? We have a constitution of master and servant. You are the owner of oil and gas, but somebody else sitting in Kaduna, somebody sitting in Maiduguri, somebody sitting in Jigawa is the owner to sell as it deems fit. You are the owner of the ports in Lagos. They are there collecting all the revenue from it and sharing as they deem fit, according to the structures they've created. Every single thing we complain about, we point our people to the provisions of the Constitution from which is flowing. And we're saying none of those things will change unless we turn off the tap. And it's not going to be the business, or it's not going to be something a good man will come and solve. Because that good man, even if it's P2B, is going to swear to defend and uphold that constitution. And so you are asking me to carry the shackles.
Allow me to make my, before we go and look into the details of the 10 points.
Right.
Allow me to speak on behalf of many people watching you now, having read and heard you before the election, what they might be wondering now.
Yes.
You know, you just a couple of minutes ago, you alluded to the fact of the manner the election was conducted.
Yes.
Then many people will say, why do you care? If you have said that these, there shouldn't be any election, you are not supporting the election, why do you bother yourself of the outcome of the election?
I am now one of those who have to buy petrol at 800 naira. And so if people who are more angry than I am begin to break people's heads, my head will be up for breaking. So they have gone to the election, and the reason the whole thing is upside down now, and I want the obedient movement people to listen carefully, Tinubu's camp. The reason we got to the kind of outcome we have now is simply because of that exclusive list in that constitution that locks down elections to federal and state offices. So the election of governors and senators and house members in the states and president, everybody who has to be elected in Nigeria, is the business of the Abuja where INEC sits. And so they can sit in Abuja. They are the ones who have to register all of those who are going to vote. It is not supposed to be so in a federation. They are the ones who issue PVC to whoever they choose to issue. So they can give, you saw the number of people from across the border, Niger Republic. Immigration was crying that foreigners had multiple voter PVCs with them. Whereas the people who were looking for PVC inside Nigeria, those who sit in Abuja, the INEC that has to preside over that registration of a voter and giving of PVC and issuing the BVA, that's the beavers machines, and providing logistics. On election day, they can bring your materials at 3 p.m. when they are delivered at 7 a.m. to some other place. On election day, the logistics of the security, it is the same centralized control of everything that has brought us to where we saw the people that went to vote. We knew who they voted for. The evidence is there. But some people are sitting in Abuja, and the matter will soon go to the judicial arm. In fact, it's already there. The judicial arm of the same system. And our people are waiting, thinking that that judicial arm will depart from what the executive and legislative arm will do. And we are saying that, why do we go to such an election knowing that the system is rigged completely against those who are going into that contest? And we have seen the outcome. If Peter Obi did not restrain the people who voted for him, you think anybody would still be governing Nigeria after 1 week of that charade we saw? It won't even last 1 week. But he said, hold on. They asked us to go to court, we'll go to court. And now you can see what's already going on in the court. Is there anything that is now there to be? When the director from INEC said that they declared the result with only 31% of the result that came through the appropriate channel. The other ones were now mutilated to produce the outcome they had. Meanwhile, the candidate they've declared the winner does not have the 25% in Federal Capital Territory. They went all over the place. Unfortunately, before they got to the US, we won about 4 days after the vote, at the time they were going to announce the result, Washington called to say, what's going on in your space? What's this thing about, I had to explain to them, I'm sure you've seen the video, where we explained to them that the 25% of Federal Capital Territory vote is a mandatory requirement of the Constitution. And therefore, this candidate that does not have it, who have been declared a winner, cannot be president under. If anybody attempts to retain that candidate as president, that will be in direct defiance of that Constitution. We gave the caveat we gave when we talked about interregnum, that if anybody would choose to do that, to retain candidate Bola Tinubu as the winner of that election, then we will join them to defy whatever is left of that Constitution. All of us who have been restraining those who are carrying arms, who have been restraining those who wanted to take laws into their hands all the while, we will join them.
Exactly on your last statement is where again, I want to, you're saying that if you put a conditionality that
Yes.
if they go ahead to retain,
yes.
Now, isn't that a departure? Because that's what I want us to get to. In this argument, let's lay it black and blue. Isn't that a departure from where you said, no, let's not go to an election? Now the election is flawed. The process is it's nothing to write home about. It's produced an outcome that is not palatable to many who believe in a process that ought to be. And you're saying if you maintain this process, if you know the outcome, if you maintain the outcome, you will join and your group will join to say, no, that's not correct. It then means to others, to those who are in power now, will now ask this question, because I say here, I'm going to be playing the devil's advocate, will say, well, is it because certain individual did not emerge? Or is it because you are against election ab initio? Isn't that a contradiction of the previous stand you had?
Our stand is in black and white, advertised in national dailies. If you go to the force majeure, declaration of December 16, 2020, you will see the 5-point proposition we put forward to say, let us accept that we now have a union dispute for people rejecting Nigeria everywhere. It is because they are rejecting the constitution of Nigeria as presently constituted, whether it is a resource control agitation or Biafra agitation or Odo agitation, number one. Number two, we must now accept that constitution has to be jettisoned completely. Number three, we have to accept that we cannot proceed to another election to renew the life of that constitution 20 years after it first came in 1999. Number four, the mechanism for working out the transition, what is it that will have to happen in that period we're not going to the election? Nominal government, like that of Federal de Klerk, discussion among the owners of the sovereignty, like CODESA did. And so number five is now a time-bound program having resolved all these initials. And so it was at the time in December of 2020 that we activated that force majeure. If Buhari, because we gave 90 days notice to the federal government to say, look, let us not allow this thing to burst open. The election might even collapse on your head if people begin to resist what is being done by INEC. And so let us leave the journey of election so that the Nigeria that collapsed the first time, was it not the election of 1964-65 that led us to 66? Was it not the independence election that led to the collapse of the Western Region Constitution in 19? So it had always been about manipulation around that then set on fire. And so back to your question, about one candidate or the other, all of them subscribe to that Constitution 1999. And we say we do not prefer any one candidate to the other. And we can be held by what we put out before the global community in 2020 to say that if anybody, our quarrel is not with the people in government house at all. Whoever was in government, if Buhari at the time we gave that 90 days, if Buhari had stepped forward on behalf of that federal government, because we are saying illicit federal government, since our federation collapsed and somebody is still sitting in Abuja saying his federal government, if Buhari had accepted that there's a problem to be solved, he probably would have been in that team of nominal governance. We will have had 3 years to sort out this matter. We do not need the whole of 3 years. We can do this in 6 months if we want. It can go all the way to 10, 12 months. It can go to 18 months. And we had 3 years from the time we began to say, let us not go. We are going to end up in a ditch. And so Buhari lives in the kind of controversy he has set up now. Whoever is going to come from government house, our contention at this time is that, yes, since things were not anarchist, and we made it very clear that anybody who is in government house as president will be the one, will be part of the nominal governance, just like Frederick de Klerk was leading the nominal governance in South Africa in the years of discussion of what will become their constitution in CODESA. That's what we're insisting has to happen. But we now have a situation where in that election, which we told everybody will go wrong, because of the centralized control of the electionary machinery. That was what turned everything upside down for the election. Yes, we did not support the election, but we are still tolerating that constitution for the sake of peace. And within the context of that limited toleration, we are going to allow the wrongdoers, that is APC, PDP, Labour Party, they all subscribe to that constitution. So as Ninas looks at them as a bunch of rogues fighting over the loot, over what they got from, they stole our sovereignty, and they are fighting over the mandate to manage that sovereignty. And we say, if that fight is not put out in some way quick enough, it will consume everybody like we saw in 1966. And it is in that limited sense that we are making this intervention to say, why do we waste the energy or time of who has won or who has lost? Let us sort out what they did as they did it, since there were rules under which they did it, and it produced an outcome that everybody could see. For the same reason, we were going to accept whoever was in government house in 2020 as president to be in the leading to lead the nominal governance that will continue in the period of that discussion. We are not advocating lacuna or anarchy, and so we say it is within that context that this election that they've gone to, whoever will emerge as the court will declare, or as they will eventually find out, however they find it out. We even addressed the Supreme Court. You saw it yesterday. We have addressed the justices of the Supreme Court to this issue to say, this is what has happened. We must go to transition now. If we attempt to make sure that somebody emerges that will then have power for 4 years, we're going to have a bigger problem that we have now. And so it is in that context. We are not, P2B said constitution is not the problem. And so he was the first we took to task to say, can you see now that the constitution is the problem? P2B said there's no ethnic question in Nigeria. But Igbo people were killed in Lagos on the day of election, people who were trying to vote for him. And so we told him in that broadcast where we were addressing candidate Bola Tinubu and candidate P2B, we told them that for P2B that he must go back to the podium and tell the whole world that the constitution of Nigeria is the principal problem, and that the paramount concern for now should be how to solve that, and not how to come to try to govern and be straight with a crooked. You can't get anything straight from a crooked situation. The constitution of Nigeria is the crooked mechanism by which Nigeria is operated. So even if P2B is a good man, I think we have to tell ourselves the truth that we must accept that we have to go to that transition now. It is within the context of going to transition that we insist that we'll not tolerate anybody who jumps into the government house from the window, like the one who is there now is trying to jump. He hasn't succeeded, he's not going to succeed. If they insist that he will succeed, then they will have the owners of the sovereignties to contend with. We don't have any preference, but we're not anarchists. And so we insist that whoever is going to come from government house into that table of discussion must be one the people can recognize as their president.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, I think, we do have other speakers here. And for those that we've called before now, that, obviously they probably haven't joined us before now. So in case if they have, would you be so kind to raise your hand if you're one of the speakers that ought to have spoken here this evening? Please be so kind to raise your hand so that we would acknowledge you and bring you to the podium. Now, I would want others to also intervene. But before I do, I have this question to ask, because I speak the minds of the so many Nigerians, if not millions, on the street, probing your depositions in order to have a better understanding and a better grasp, and sometimes, to really understand your inner thinking. Now, my question goes to, you speak with so much finality. You use words like, we must, this is the only solution. Then I ask you, in your worldview and in that which you propose, is there anything like a middle ground? Is there anything like a melting point? Did you get that? Okay, hold on. I hope you understood my question. You can unmute yourself now.
Right. Yes,
okay,
I understand. Now, middle ground is for us to declare the truth that is staring us in the face. This constitution is not something in the sky which we have to go to heaven to ascertain. It is on the table. It is the title deed by which Nigeria is owned, controlled, operated. And so I'm talking about my Ijaw land. I'm talking about my Yoruba land. I'm talking about my Tiv land that is now part of Nigeria. In that Tiv land, I have, what do they call it again? Limestone underneath. But I cannot touch that limestone. That limestone is allotted by the so-called federal government, who does not want to talk to me, to one Fulani man called Dangote, and he becomes Africa's richest man. In Ijaw land, the complaint of those, to tell you when I say we, when I speak the way I speak, before we began to draw any lines, we went round in this project to sit down with all of those who were complaining very loudly at the time. Some of them had even become angry enough to carry arms. The Niger Delta Volunteer Force of Asari of the time, the Ghanaian Dance OPC, and the Masob of Wazirike. We interrogated the situation and did our diagnosis of what has brought about all of this. And we began to draw up what we could do to reverse the situation, because we live here. We may all pretend, but if it goes bust, it will consume everybody. So that responsibility for ourselves, we have to take responsibility for ourselves and then begin to take charge of the space. Otherwise, people who do not wish us well are going to be in charge of our space. People are being slaughtered in the Middle Belt today, not because they do not know how to shoot to defend themselves, but the Constitution forbids them from touching guns. And there are people who are wielding guns, people they can see, people that are known to the government, people that are related to their president, their commander-in-chief who is supposed to be defending them. There's Miyetti Allah. That president was a life grand patron of, he's still life grand patron of Miyetti Allah. He was not going to move away from it. But in all his 8 years, he remained life grand patron to the Miyetti Allah that was taking very proudly responsibility for what Fulani herdsmen were doing, slaughtering people and taking their lands. And so in that kind of a setting, if we went to thief people in this project of redemption, if we went to them and they came with us to say, oh yes, what you are seeing, what you are doing is what you are proposing is going to restore our life back to us. And we went to the Ijaw people, say, put your guns aside. Let us go to a meeting of all so that we can find consensus on what to do to solve the problem, so that you are not forever having to be killed because you have oil and gas occur in your space. We went to Ghanaian dams. Please, the internal security arrangement of Yoruba land is the same as it is everywhere else. Nigeria imposed it. And he put his guns aside in that period. When we convened the Pronaco meeting, it was because we were looking for middle ground. And in 2 years, 164 ethnic delegations start discussing these matters so that it doesn't become an inferno. We sat in Lagos, we sat in Port Harcourt, we sat in Enugu, we sat in Jos, we sat in Kano, and we came back to conclude in Lagos. The US sent observer mission, European Union sent observer mission. And if you had such a conference and you had a Nohoro that went to prison many times in the fight for liberation, saying, let us go and finish what is left to decolonize ourselves. That is Anthony Nohoro. You had Ojukwu that led the Biafran side in that war, coming to the table to say, oh, the things that led to that fight appear to be happening again. You had Shoyinka that was imprisoned in the midst of that commotion of 66 to 70. He almost died in prison, coming to that discussion. You had Chino Achebe, supporting it when he heard about it. You had all the actors of the time actors there. And so, having done that, 164 ethnic delegations of people who were already carrying arms, and then the government, Buhari that became president in 2015 was part of the Fulani delegation that came at the time because it was the ethnic owners of the land that were invited to that Pronaco conference to decide. I'm going by your question, what is the middle ground? It was that middle ground we searched for 2 years, and we got what was acceptable to everybody. We got what could have gone to referendum. We got what could have been the basis of going to, process some kind of ratification that will be, we didn't say we knew it all, but we're saying if we have discussed in this manner, involving all these people that were eager to leave the union even at that time, can we not? Why would the regional renegades that now converge in Abuja, the refuge camp that it has become for regional renegades, why would they be stronger than all of us? And so when I speak, I'm not speaking on behalf of 10 people or 20 people who are having lunch in one room. I'm speaking on the authority of all of those who have at one time or the other submitted themselves into this process. Sovereignty belongs to the people. Even their constitution admits it in section 14.2a. Sovereignty belongs to the people, from whom government, through this constitution, derives all its powers and authority. That's in black and white. So on the basis of that, they had come to claim that it was the people, we the people, the Ijaw, the Ogoni, everybody standing on their land, the Tiv, the Bero, the Yoruba, the Igbo. It is that false claim that we're challenging. And if anybody is thinking, if anybody is stupid enough to think that falsehood, that forgery, because it is so, I'm a lawyer of 31 years, and so I can tell you the meaning of forgery. When Okeke does something and they say it's Okafor, and okay, therefore Okafor say, this is not my signature. You have taken my land, you have taken my oil, you have taken my bitumen, you have taken my limestone. We must go to discuss it now. If we are not discussing, sovereignty that belongs to the people will be asserted by the people. That's why I speak the way nobody's going to sit and get killed because a bunch of soldiers imposed by decree something that took their sovereignty. We have organized them. We have mobilized them. The international stakeholders in the matter, the people who will come, like you see happening in Niger now, the people who will come if it becomes a bigger problem. They took their time in 2019. The US took 7 months to listen to all of this because we told them that the terror that was coming to our space was being invited by the Fulani agenda that was going to overrun the place to take for themselves. Have we not seen how it panned out? Did anybody arrest any of them? Mieti Allah was given 100 billion from the treasury by their patron, who happens to be the president and commander-in-chief. So how will such a union be? Who is going to build that country for you if you have everybody working hard to dismantle what you are building? The architecture, the unitary architecture of Nigeria, the unitary architecture of Nigeria is what we are rejecting. If we go back to Nigeria being a federation, we will be on the construction side to build it. But if anybody wants to continue the construction of Nigeria on the basis of this unitary architecture, we will do whatever it takes to pull down that construction. And if those who ought to have come out of that building so that we can have a common project, remain inside it, whatever happens to them is going to be of no consequence,
So some Nigerians at this point, some Nigerians at this point will say, is that a threat to them that if things doesn't go the way you think it should, that there should be cause for worry?
I'm talking about my sovereignty. Talking about their sovereignty, and we're only saying, let us go and discuss it. You can't confiscate it, and you turn around to insult me.
Exactly. You said now, let us go and discuss it.
Yes.
If they refuse, nobody needs to organize anybody. Those who are being slaughtered, are going to find a way to defend themselves. I agree now, but I have another question to you.
Let me explain one item so you can know how it will happen. Unfortunately for those who are holding us this hostage, it is that constitution that gave them all the rights and powers they're exercising. It is that constitution that is a fraud that has been declared by even the one who enacted it. Obasanjo says, let us go and get the people to make a constitution they will consider their own. Obasanjo that imposed it in 1979 and revived it for them in 1999. Olani Pekun, chairman, body of benchers, former president of Bar Station, goes to say, look, who are these the people? Where did we meet? How did we write this constitution? The decree by which it is done is printed inside the document. The account of the author, Absalom Abaka, is printed inside the document. How he set up a committee that went to sit around in hotels. Is that the document that will be the basis of people being killed in their space? Is that the document that will remain the basis of economic assets being taken away and shared over the heads of the owners? I assure you, it will not survive.
Okay, now let me, there's been an attempt, but in recent times, we have seen the 2014 confab report. After that, we had the APC restructuring report headed by the former governor of Kaduna State and now a nominee of the current APC president to becoming a minister. There was this committee report from, I believe, 2017 and the confab report of 2014. If the government wakes up tomorrow and says, we want to look into these two committee reports or these two reports, match them together, inviting Nigerians to ratify that, would that, in your view, suffice to quell your demands that you have on the nation Nigeria? Tony, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here. The answer is a capital no. Do you know why? The conference, can you remember the first decision taken on the floor of the conference in 2014? Let's start from 2014. Can you remember?
Area.
Good. But decided on the floor of the conference. The reason I asked that question is that the pressure to solve this problem began right from 1999 when that constitution was imposed. In 3 weeks, we raised the red flag to say, oh no, we can't go back to 79 the way they brought it back. It's going to lead us into trouble. But when the government, I attended Obasanjo's inauguration in 1999, on account of the fact that I was directly involved in how they got to that point. Let us solve this problem. And he pretended he was going to listen. He was taking some of the things and addressing the issues that were coming at him. Eventually, he stabilized enough to now turn around like a snake to say, by the time we had finished our consultations, to call a conference to discuss a conference of the people, a sovereign meeting of the owners of the sovereignty. Obasanjo went on national TV to say that it will amount to treason if we were to call such a meeting. And back and forth, of course, when he saw the kind of people that turned up, you were going to arrest Enohoro, you were going to arrest Ojukwu, you are going to arrest Sisiono, you are going to arrest Ndubisi Kanu and all kinds of people. You were going to arrest Janakiri, all of those who were coming from Nadeko to now say, let us go and finish the business of working out the constitution that by which we go into this democracy. Obasanjo became the chief enemy of going to solve the problem. And threatening, just like this one, the one that is now threatening anarchy. Obasanjo went on national TV to threaten that it will amount to treason if we were to call such a meeting. Of course, we had to defy him, and we called the meeting. And the meeting succeeded in doing the things Nigeria had been unable to do since after 1967. And coming from there, the pressure continued until Jonathan emerged. In fact, so bad was the pressure that it was, I remember, I'm sure you recall, when the job people insisted that Jonathan must solve this problem, otherwise they would take it out against him. 2010, 2011, going forward to 2012. So it was on account of that pressure that it came to where we had to come in to explain to the former President Jonathan what these issues were all about, because the people who were talking to him, they could explain what they could explain. Eventually, it is now safe to tell the public that it came to where it was a team I led that had to go to explain to President Jonathan, and he then accepted that this meeting cannot be avoided. That was what became that announcement in October of 2013, that we will have to go to discuss the matter from the foundation of where it went wrong. If you recall, the day they were burying the mother of Sullivan Chime, then governor in Enugu, the day the mother was being buried in Udi, Jonathan did say that the problems confronting us come from 1914. And when he was inaugurating Okoromo's committee, he did say that we have to look at the things that happened in the period leading to 1914 and the things that happened in the period leading to 1960 that we're likely to see some of the things that are now responsible for what we are suffering. And so it was against that backdrop. I happen to have been privy to how that conference came. The modalities that should have solved the problem in terms of a two-stage modality in which the people who are federating will have to organize themselves in the formations they want, and it will become their decision to federate according to how they agree with everybody else. Those modalities were overturned, and they summoned a conference of Little Ogoni, Little Ishekiri, come to sit with Igbo and Yoruba in Abuja. They didn't want to solve the problem. So they went away from what the mandate of Jonathan. It was this alliance of 1967 that later became APC that overturned what Jonathan was trying to do, and they accused him of wanting to remain in office. And so they shut down the business of the conference. So what they went on discussing did not touch any of this. That was why we didn't, all of those from our circle who were invited to the conference, starting with myself, we decided to stay away.
In order to make this quite enjoyable for our viewers, we need to be concise here. And to summarize what you've said, you said that, to my question, that it is a capital no, because the former president departed from whatever was discussed as regards to the 2014 confab report. Now, what of the 10 points of the APC 2017 report led by Nasir El-Rufai, which actually point 9 in that had a referendum in it? Go ahead. I think,
right.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. I need to unmute me. All right.
No, you are muted now.
Right. Now, the one of El-Rufai, just for the public to understand why we are not going to touch what the mandate they now define for themselves in writing was that the outcome of the conference of 2014 will be integrated into the Constitution of Nigeria 1999. So that was where it died. It died before it started. So all the things, all those 600 recommendations were done to evade the principal question of, are we in this union by our own volition? And if yes, on what terms? Which will then include the formations of whether 36 states or 4 regions or whatever else we decide. They evaded that question by going to do what they did. And that question is back at the center stage. That question is going to consume those who have been evading it since after Aburi. On the second point, 2017, El-Rufai and APC, they were building everything on the foundation of the fraud and the falsehood they had imposed on us as constitution. So they are going to paint the window for a house that had to be pulled down for reconstruction. They were offering to paint the window and change the curtain and give us some kind of new ventilation. They were just joking. And if you go to read that report, you will see that El-Rufai referred directly to what we were proposing as the reason they will not do anything at all. That we are insisting we go to the area they don't want to go to. It's in that report. They refer to the map, the map of MNN, the map of, he referred to that report referred to those. So they know very clearly what they are doing. But what surprises us that the victims of that imposition also join in saying, let us keep it the way it is. Those who are suffering, those who are being slaughtered in their homeland, those whose economic assets have been seized and their environment being, despoliated, are not going to take it forever. They own their land. And unfortunately for those who are trying to hold us together by force, we spent 20 years organizing all of them to come around to answer the constitutional questions emanating from the constitutional grievances that are well known. These are constitutional grievances. Why can't we go to address them? Why will a few people be pointing guns at us and say they're government? And then nobody, we have not mandated this union as defined by that constitution. We have not mandated anybody to come and govern us with a constitution that tie our hands to the back. And we're saying it's 24 years since 1999. For people who may say, oh, you are impatient, you don't want to take it easy. The very people, if we were to name the Bola Tinubu that is now president, he was in NADECO. He was part of how PRONACO, that conference of the nationalities, happened. He facilitated it for Chief Enohoro, who was leading it. And at what point did it now become a strange thing for him that we should stop and solve this problem, other than going to swear to defend and uphold the constitution that ruined the lives of people, responsible for the killings and the poverty that is about to swallow everybody? And so they really do not have any alternative. They're not bringing any argument to the table for why we cannot do it. And now that we have a clear majority of those who are fed up with what Nigeria has been dishing out to them, organizing themselves to retake their sovereignty. If we cannot renegotiate that sovereignty, they are going to retake it. There are maps to it, there are constitutions to it, and they have now worked themselves into the commotion that will land us in that Araba bus stop, because that appears to be where they want to go. They want to end the union by the kind of things they are doing. And at every point in time, our proposition remains on the table for everybody, anybody who has a better proposition for how we can work out how to be a union of sanctity of life and a union of equality of men. That's all we demand. A union of sanctity of life and a union of equality of men. The one we have now that accommodates Sharia in one belt is not a union of sanctity of life. The one we have now that operates on feudalist principles is not a union of equality of men. That's where you call the quota system. You see all of us. Others can be diplomatic about it or be fearful about it. It's gone past all of that. That constitution will go down. Those who want to defend and uphold my enslavement should be ready, including my twin brother. If he wants to swear to defend and uphold that constitution, he should be ready to live with the consequences of his decision. As for me, I'm going to do whatever it takes to liberate myself from that bondage. That's where we are. You can't hear him.
Njenje, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Now we can. We lost you for about half a minute.
Yeah, sorry about that. I said thank you very much for that, Tony, I must say. And when we started this, you made it very clear that this evening is to look for and seek for an alternative to what is currently happening. And I said, in my view, I would have preferred that we are seeking for alternative solutions, so that we do not only box ourselves into one. Because I do personally have issues when we argue that this is the only solution. And I say, well, if that becomes the only solution, that means we may be having a limited worldview. There might be many solutions, but what is not constant and what is not acceptable is that the status quo, as we know it, we can't continue with it. That's a given. I think everybody, even those who have gone to election, those who objected to the election, those who want Nigeria broken, those who want to mend the house, those who believe that the car has no engine, those who even believe that the car has engine, but the crankshaft and the piston and rings are all wobbling. Everybody know that there is one thing, and one thing everyone has in common, that the current status quo does not serve its purpose, right? So, and in the current status quo not serving its purpose, question then is, what is that alternative solution? And it is quite unfortunate, because this evening, bearing in mind the caliber of people that were invited in this, we had the Labour Congress, Joe Ajero, who is the president, and we're expecting that he sent a delegate. We had Ikechukwu Ezike. Oh, sorry. I think I saw Ezike here. Hold on. Ezike, are you is it the same? Akachukwu Ezike, is it? If that's you, please kindly unmute, because you've been called before to make your presentation. Is that you?
Yeah, Akachukwu is my son. I am Ibuchukwu. I tried to log in with my own identity, but it didn't work. So I have to scramble by all means to ensure that I join this discussion.
Okay. Just now that I'm reading the names, I kind of, as Ezike clicked in, I say, I think I know that name. So now, on that note, I will yield. If you're in an environment that you can turn on your video, it will be greatly appreciated. And you've been here for a while and you've been listening to the conversation. If it doesn't, I would okay, we'll start your video later. So if I will bring you to the podium now, haven't listened to this.
Hello, sir.
Because what we are here to do is to seek for the alternative narrative.
Alternative solution.
Yes. So go ahead.
Thank you, the anchor. Am I right?
Yes, go ahead. Mazi is okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen who are in the house. When I joined, I listened to Barrister Tony Nade espousing issues on the way forward. I referring to Hisuku issues also. I think I totally agree with Barrister Nade in the explanation that he has done. You recall that the Civil Liberties Organization too, and other civil society organizations and activists and people's organizations like NAS, like ASU, like NLC in those days, all of us fought during the military regime to return Nigeria to civilian democracy. It was not a struggle without prices. Some of us were killed, some of us were detained, some of us went on exile, and some of us were expelled from the universities and other social institutions who participated in this struggle. When we got civilian rule from this struggle in 1999, we wanted to see what Nigeria was transiting to. Unfortunately, like Barrister Nade explained, the civilian politicians weren't and are still not able to give Nigeria what they are asking for. And the desires of Nigerians to have a society of their own, a just, fair, equitable, and sincere society, where you can say your view in line with the laws of the land, and you will not be killed, and you will not be arrested, and you will not be sent out of the country. Unfortunately, what we experienced under the military dictatorship has become worse under civilian, what they call democracy. Now is a civilian dictatorship. Like Nadia explained, you can't sleep with your two eyes, with even your one eye closed. People will come to your house, kill you, rape your wife, rape your daughters, and say nothing will happen. And exactly nothing has happened. People will marry your daughters, underage daughters, without having done the rightful thing in accordance with your tradition. Kept in MS palaces, kept with certain persons in this country. And when the police, they go, they say they were overpowered. Those persons have transited to become the wives of certain persons without bride paid, without parents consenting to the marriage, without the girls consenting to the marriage, and they have been transformed into another religion against their wishes. You know, we know all those things. These things are happening because we have a law that we all of us did not sit down to discuss it. I wouldn't know if I would have accepted that anybody will come and take my daughter by force, marry her, and convert her to another religion against her wish and my wish. If we were in a place where we discuss about writing a constitution, a law that will guide us, Ibuchukwu Ezike wouldn't have accepted to that law, and I don't think the anchor would have done so. So it is not possible again for you to come to my backyard and take the resources that God has bestowed on me or on my land and go to somewhere else, come with your local government areas, come with the politicians, come with your kinsmen and women, and do them the way you like without even asking me, do you like it? Do you want it? Everything is done by force. And so, how will if you are saying there is alternative, well, people may have alternatives, but these alternatives are what you have seen that I've failed. 2 days ago, Nigerian Labour Congress and TUC and some of us in the civil society went to the streets to protest. This protest is what we have been doing since 1990s or even before. And what did you achieve? At the end of the day, the president of NSC and the president of TUC ended up at House of Rock to discuss with the same person that they said is in Nigeria. What is it that we are demanding or they are demanding that this government has been able to resolve? Are there new refineries? Are they reactivating the old ones? Have they reduced the price of petroleum pump prices? You know, the school fees, the suffering that Nigerians are passing through today, which one has been addressed? You recall that in 2005, the LASCO, that is Labour Civil Society Coalition, led by then Adams Oshemole, with the late Chimobani, my own late executive director, as the secretary. We traversed the width and length of this country, saying that we want system change. That was what took the life of Chimobani and Tunji Oyeleri of the Vanguard newspapers, a photojournalist. So, and at the end of the day, we ended it. Nothing came out of it. In 2012, we gathered in Lagos, in Abuja, in all parts of the country, to demand for the same thing. And at the end of the day, we, came to Ojota, Faniga point there, and stayed. Immediately we left to say, let's go and come back on Monday. A different thing happened. And today, nothing came out of it. Some of us were seriously injured. Some were arrested. So out of all these things, arresting people, detaining people, killing people, sending people on exile. You recall that the current president was on exile before 1999. You recall also that he was arrested and detained with Yochayu and other members of the Senate there because they reconvened the Senate, which late Abacha had dispersed. So you see, this is that when you are not one of them, you say you join us to shout. But when you are one of them, like the president now, he's no longer seeing the constitution, writing a new constitution for Nigeria as anything reasonable because he's there. He will loot, he will plunder with his colleagues there. But if he is sincere, a sincere person like Jerry Rawlings did when he became the president of Ghana, he saw the plight of the downtrodden people, the peasants in the rural communities, and said, these children These people are people born like I and any other person. These amenities that have not been extended to them will be extended to them. These opportunities that they didn't have, they will have it. That's how to build a society. Not when you are on the saddle, you say everything is all right. How can everything be all right in this country? Do you know how many families that go to bed without breakfast, without lunch, and without dinner? Some brilliant students have been withdrawn from schools, from primary to university. And there are a lot of things that are happening in this country that are not condonable. If we say we continue to condone, to which level, to what level will we be condoning to? So there is no alternative to sitting down to write a new law on how Nigerian people should organize, should be led, resources should be controlled and shared. I don't see any superior alternative. There may be other alternatives, but I don't see any other superior alternative. This is alternative is palliative, and I think that it is the alternative that will serve the interests of Nigerian people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, you've basically within a short period of time said a lot of things, but putting it in concrete terms, we all know what the problem is. We all know what is not working. In 1 minute, are you able to tell us what is your own alternative solution that you're proposing? And this will form the basis for any other person subsequently speaking as we are now rounding up to, feed us with solutions. If you don't mind, in 1 minute. Are you okay? Are you still there? Okay. Do we have any other further? Do we have any questions so that before we call the speakers that are here to give their closing remarks or their closing thoughts, and at the same time reinforce for those who haven't necessarily given their alternative solutions to reaffirm and lay their own solutions bare. But before then, if you have a question, you cannot unmute yourself anyway, because it is a standard procedure here. If you're not a co-host, you cannot unmute. You can only unmute yourself if you request to, and the only way you can request to is for you to raise your hand, your digital hand. So if you raise your digital hand, you will be called upon and be granted access to, unmute and speak to us. Okay, so we'll take a couple of minutes. Do we have anyone asking a question?
Sorry.
Is there anything you haven't understood that you want to ask a question? Then we can take that. Ndidi, I can see you unmuted yourself. What is your question or your contribution?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't find my hand up. It's really to say I'm Ndidi Wechwe, and I'm one of those people who are in the diaspora, and we were told, oh, come to Nigeria and come and help Nigerians. I then invested all my savings in a farm in my ancestral land, my ancestral kingdom. I came to Nigeria one day after Buhari got sworn in. That was in 2015 May. By 2016 January or February, Fulani herdsmen had trespassed onto my farm. And within that year and a half, they burnt it, destroyed the well that was in the leased land, etc., etc. To cut a long story short, I had to shut down my farm. Savings gone. Black lives do not matter in Nigeria. And I say that with a lot of authority because I'm a retired Metropolitan Police officer, that's London. And never would such a thing happen in England. Even a trespasser is a big problem. Talk less of a trespasser that commits robbery, arson, etc. In Nigeria, your Black life does not matter. it was while wondering what is going on, I providentially came across the Lower Niger Congress Facebook page. And when I read that Nigerians did not write the constitution, I said, oh my God, bloody hell. Sorry, I'm swearing, but that's what I said. I said, oh, bloody hell, there's going to be a war in this place. Because I recognized it was a forgery. I didn't realize that the LNC Ninas had a brilliant plan. And I say that as an expert in law enforcement. I'm not a lawyer. And when I saw the evidence of all the work, the solemn assemblies, the pronaco, everything that Ninas had done before they even declared the constitutional force majeure, I was highly impressed. And I'm going to take my time to explain, because there may be young people listening here. When you're a police officer and you've charged your suspect, you prepare the case papers. Even before I prepare my case papers, but let's just say by the time I've done it, I know I've won the case because I've got all my evidence, I've got all my victims, my witnesses, everything is in place. I've won the case and it still hasn't even gone to court yet. But I've looked at my evidence, I've met all the points to prove I know it. That's what Ninas has done. They've done all the work, dotted the I's, crossed the T's. And we are now here. And then when I found out about LNC Ninas, I asked, and Tony is a witness here, to be a signatory to the constitutional force majeure, because I realized that this is a brilliant thing to help Black people. I couldn't help them with the farm, but I can now help them with something even better by giving them their sovereignty back so that they can make a decision for themselves. Now, there's no middle ground when you're talking about a forgery. There's no middle ground because, as Tony explained, it's a lie. So there's a lie and there's truth. Some things you're not sure of, but this one's a lie. And the reason that Ninas can be so precise and so specific, it's like they're saving lives. It's about saving lives, not just saving property and resources, but also saving lives. So if, for instance, you've got, say, brain tumor, you don't want the surgeon to be cutting here, cutting there, cutting everywhere. You want your brain surgeon to follow a precise pathway, don't you? Because there's so many blood vessels in your brain. Not only could you end up being a vegetable, you could die if he's cutting up and down. And self-determination is something as important, as serious as that. It involves all the indigenous ethnic nations of Nigeria, plus we've got international stakeholders. So it's precise and specific. And that is why Tony can be as precise as he's saying. And he's the spokesman, but several of them have done the work. Now, for me, just before I end, some Ninas came up with some broadcasts, video broadcasts today and yesterday. And people are asking, what should Nigerians do now? Well, what I can say it in 4 ways, 4 things that they should do. First of all, they need one thing. They need to have honesty. Without that, they can do nothing except carry on being killed and carry on with this corruption and carry on being called a shithole. People living in a shithole if they don't have honesty. First thing is honesty. And then they say the Nigerians will have to reject the fraud called 1999 Constitution. Second thing, Nigerians will have to acknowledge that they were wrong in having had elections 2023 when Nigeria had a dysfunctional constitutional arrangement. Third thing, Nigerians have to reject any rerun since a clear winner had come out of the presidential elections, and a rerun is a scam for the Tinubu camp to finally fling away the winner, Peter Obi. And number 4, Nigerians will insist that Peter Obi openly rejects that 1999 constitution and insist on transitioning using the Ninas transitioning template. Yeah, and why is it the Ninas transitioning template and nothing else? Because nobody else has done the work. Only Ninas has done the work. That's why it has to be the Ninas transitioning template. They've done the work according to United Nations guideline. So we've got to sort of like grow up. Somebody has done the work, you've not done it. So we go with the person who's done the work and they've taken 24 years. And you guys don't have 24 years again. okay? Because now the Fulani are in your farms. 24 years ago, they were not in the farms destroying, killing, and raping. Now they are. And Ninas are the only people who've done the work. So it's not about, oh, why is it not me? Why is it not me? You know, that kind of childish thing that Nigerians are fond of. If this had been in England, they would be praising Ninas for doing this work without even asking for 1 penny. That's why I'm getting annoyed, because they've done all this work. Nobody gave them 1 penny. The solemn assemblies, everything they've done. We know how things work in this life. Money is needed, and they did it without deceiving anybody, scamming anybody. They need to be praised for the work they've done. And that's why I asked to be a signatory to the constitutional force majeure. So Nigerians, the ball is in your court. It's you young people who are going to have a wretched life if you don't take down that 1999 constitution and act like a man and be like people in England who've got sovereignty and self-determination. I had a great life in Europe. But you're not going to have the great life I had as a young person if you stay here. You're going to want to jackpot and do all sorts of criminality to jackpot when all you have to do is do the right thing, get rid of that 1999 constitution, and you can create a lovely place here. And some people like myself, and they're better than me, they can give you advice on how that can be done. So that's it. I'm done speaking. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ndidi. Thank you for that point made. In your worldview, there are 4 points that you've made that should be followed, and should be taken into consideration. Well done once more for that point well made. Now, do we have another person that will make intervention so that we can take some interventions as we close? Any more questions? Any more clarifications? Okay, I would leave the questions to I would say that we will close. We'll be closing this way, having this question in mind. Ndiduweche just shortly now told us that the way forward is to get down, or in her words, bring down the 1999 Constitution. Some watching now from their homes, some on their mobile phones will think easier said than done. Question is, how do we make that happen? Or how would Ninas make that happen? I would want Tony as the last person to answer this question. How do you bring down the 1999 Constitution, and why do you think that since Ninas has been saying this, you've been meeting those now in government, meeting them in private? Why do you think that they have not listened since 1999 to date? So, but before I do that, before I bring Tony in, I think we still have Reverend Dr. Salami here, having listened to everything that your co-speakers have shared on this platform. I would ask you once more, sir, what is your final take as to the alternative solution?
Thank you, NJJ. There is no other alternative. To be honest, if we are looking for any alternative outside what Nina's Board of Conveners and Tony had prescribed, we are only being dishonest. We are only being dishonest. People are dying daily. Corruption is killing people. The church leaders are so dishonest. So there's no other shortcut. There's no other shortcut except these Nina's provisions. I've studied Nigerian issue for over 30 years. I've been involved in how to bring people into govern a state. But at the end of the day, we discover that is the problem, the problem the right people face, the men of integrity face, is the 99 Constitution that controls the whole system. Fulani decide whatever anybody wants in this nation. It is wrong. It is wrong. It is stealing. So there's no other alternative. If anybody is saying there's an alternative or anybody demanding for an alternative from whatever Nina is saying, they are all rogues. They are all rogues and dishonest people. I yield the mic.
Thank you very much. That was a very passionate submission. And if I go down the order of the way, and we are closing now, or rather about coming to an end. And it must be noted that those that were invited as speaker, many of them didn't. The NLC president, Ibuchukwu Ezike, just spoke to us moments ago, and we just heard from Reverend Dr. Salami, who is a delegation to the Yoruba delegation to the NINAS. Obviously, the co-convener of NINAS, Barrister Tony Nadi, is the one who's been speaking here for a very long time. I do not know if we have Elder T.K. Ogoriba here. Ogoriba is also a co-convener NINAS. And we did hear from Utumba Shade Ulukoya, who is also a co-convener. And we did not hear from Majid Dahiru, a journalist and a senior political analyst, Comrade Iga Akeregwa, President Civil Liberty Organization, the CLO. So some of these men that we've mentioned are not here. I think the only person here, or if you are maybe with a different device, please, by all means, raise your hand so that we can obviously find you. But in the absence of that, I think I would, before I take on Tony as the last person, let me quickly, the same question, rephrase it and ask Olukoya, if you're there, if you may kindly unmute and give us your final submission in form of a closing remark with your alternative solution.
And JJ, you're asking me for alternative solutions?
Yes.
No.
You can reinforce what you've been, you can tell us to do a Niger Republic. It's an opinion.
No. We started this thing because we realized that, we've been saying all along, we didn't make this constitution. They stole our sovereignty. Each of us, Yorubas, Igbos, whatever, Jukuns, they stole everybody's sovereignty. And they patched us all together under one constitution. When our founding fathers put us under 4 constitutions, in fact 5, including the federal government. So we don't have plan B. We don't have plan B. Maybe the only differences, small differences may be when we get our sovereignties back, when our sovereignties is in our hand, we now go for referendum and plebiscite. It's possible that Ijo and maybe Shekiri or whatever may decide to federate together. You understand? Or Yorubas themselves may decide they want a confederation. That may be the only difference we can have. But to have a plan B, that we have an alternative solution, there's no solution to our sovereignty. We all want our sovereignties in our hands to determine our future, to educate our children the way our culture and demands. Because we are all different cultures. And the way we want to educate our children is not worldwide. Education may be worldwide, but the way to it is not. So please, as far as I'm concerned, in fact, I'm sorry to say this, I see Tony as a pacifist. You see him talking passionately, everything. Yes, it hurts him. He's been at it longer than any of us. I met him in the struggle, but we could have escalated this in a long time, if not for Tony. I told you he was the one going around, getting Yorubas to put away their guns, Ijos to put aside their guns, Igbos to put so that we can all come together and talk. Nobody was ready to talk before. So Tony was a pacifist, and he is still remaining one. He keeps telling you we are not anarchists, and we will, left to me, every single political office holder and anybody that has ever carried ballot box in this country, we will get rid of all of them, left to me, because they don't have our interest at heart. They are not interested in us. Like Ndidi said, we are not people to be in front of them, whether black or white, we are not people. They are just there to satisfy, to what do I call, to authenticate their elections, make people, the whole world see that they've won election. That's all they use us for. And once the elections have been authenticated, they forget us. And we are all sitting there looking for money, looking for food, looking for jobs. Well, even to go to school is a problem. And it's now worse. With Tinubu's advent now, with the advent of Tinubu, everything is even worse now. School fees has jumped 300, 400%, both in government schools and in private schools. How do we manage? How do we sustain such a lifestyle? My brother, there's no alternative. I have no alternative than that. And everybody must go their separate ways first. Hold your sovereignty in your hands, and then we can come together as independent nations, ethnic nations, and decide, okay, it's possible. The whole of Southern Nigeria may end up coming together as a confederation, but that will be our decision. It's not my decision. It's not an alternative. I will.
You said you do not have an. You said you do not have an alternative.
I said it's possible. It's possible.
No, you said you do not have an alternative
I don't have.
and you dropped an alternative as well, because your own alternative is that probably everybody should go their separate way first.
Because Nigerians have, Nigerians, they have made us, we are, what shall I call it? We need our brains to be resetting. We are also used to being Nigerians, most of us. We find it, we are afraid of change. So maybe, I'm just saying, if with your sovereignty in your hand, a German decides to federate with Ogoni, or we all decide, that's our business. It's not me. It's not me, but I'm just saying. But that I will ever advocate an alternative. No. I want my Yoruba sovereignty in my hand. I want to be independent.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for that submission. Now, in 3 to 5 minutes max, I would want Tony to do the last summary here before we disperse from these, August gathering in August. Tony, the question to you is, since 1999, by the submissions you've made here, you've told us that since 1999, how you have engaged the former President Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, Goodluck Ebere Jonathan, and many others who have been in government. Now, my question to you is, why do you think in all your engagement with these men and women you've mentioned here, why is it that they appear uninterested in the solution proposed by you and the organization? Secondly, in your summary, as Ndidi alluded to, when she said, how to bring down the 1999 Constitution, I would say, can you expand on that narrative that she posited here? How could you, or how could anyone, bring down the 1999 Constitution? By these two questions, I'll yield and say, well, once you're done with it, then we can call it a day. Thank you very much once more, Tony.
Yes, thank you. Our observation, having dealt eyeball to eyeball with all of those who ended up in Government House from 1999 on this subject, is that they are committed to, they are committed to their interests, what they share among themselves. That's what brought them to government. That's all they want to defend with all their life. Except for Yar'Adua sent Bola Tinubu, after he was sworn in 2007, to approach us at the time, because it was Enohoro that was our leader at the time, that he told the story of how Enohoro brought their father, the senior Yar'Adua, before Shehu. There was Musa Yar'Adua that was a minister in the First Republic. And so Yar'Adua, was prepared to engage this whole discussion from inside government. And so he's Tinubu, who had just been governor, he had handed over as governor in May of 2007, to come to offer us, something that could bring us into his government so that this matter could be dealt with from within. He offered 5 ministerial slots, 10 ambassadorial positions. Bola Tinubu is still alive. Anybody who has access to him should ask him, whether that did not happen. The answer we gave him is the answer we're going to give today, is the same answer we gave to everybody after Yaradua, to say, you must go to the public to commit. Going to what should we do? Our demand is simple, and that's why we stated it so very clearly in the constitutional force majeure. There's a 5-point proposition for the how these things can be done step by step from where we are now. In fact, in 2018, we did raise a memo when Buhari went to France to say, oh, these people who are talking about all kinds of restructure, they don't even know what they're looking for. He ran his mouth in France. And then 2 days after, we raised a memo, an open memo to Buhari on the restructuring debate, where we spelled out step by step how it has to be done. And when people refer to what Tony is saying, that I'm only a spokesman, in that force majeure, constitutional force majeure of 2020, you could see that there were 128 signatories, almost 40 from each of the blocks. In the Igbo list, you saw the head of Ohaneze with Ukiwe listed, and the whole number of other people. In the Yoruba list, you saw the kind of people that signed. Anybody who could lay any claim to anything, they were there. In the Middle Belt list, you saw Jonah Jang, you saw Professor Turaki. In the Niger Delta, you saw those who, the head of PANDEF at the time. So it's not, I'm just the Tony Nadi is merely the spokesman of the group. And we carefully made that choice because of the issues that could arise in terms of treason that the government will want to throw around. So it is those 5 points of proposition is the how. Let us accept that this constitution we did not make is the problem. Let us accept that we have to jettison it 100% because you can't build anything on falsehood. Let us accept that we can't proceed to other elections under that constitution because it will reinforce, Let us then go to the two-stage procedure by which the owners of the sovereignties will be the ones deciding. Nobody in Abuja. There were people who asked questions in the background. There's one that came from Techno Kamo. He was talking about amendments. It's not the business of National Assembly to make constitution for us. National Assembly is like part of a management team of a company. Constitution is the memo and articles of that company exclusively belonging to the jurisdiction of the owners of the company. And so it's not business for National Assembly. Anybody, including lawyers, who will say, let's go to National Assembly to amend, we then say, amend what? Because we have not made any constitution. That's our contention. They're holding us by the decree they impose on us. There is also another question that relates to that says, who should that Nina should tell everybody what to do. That should explain how the constitution is the reason things are the way they are. That was why, moderator, sir. That was why, and you could accommodate it in 5 minutes. That was why I wanted us to go to those 10 points of interrogatories, which we put out before the election, which is now everything we said in those 10 points is playing out now. The people crying about fuel subsidy, what happened to refinery? Constitution. The people crying about corruption, what happened to corruption? Constitution. What brings it to be? The people crying about being killed in the Middle Belt, what is killing them? Constitution that has arms and ammunition on the exclusive list. Every single thing, the impunity we see, the infrastructure that's in decay, the election that is upside down every time. And so those people who have been involved in the process, but who get to government house and begin to do other things, they were never for the people. And we are insisting that the sovereignty of people cannot be hijacked by those who are, merchants, how do you describe them? Merchants of fortune that go in the name of the people to government house. We're saying the constitution that has our signature as authorization for our damnation must now go down. And it's not matter for negotiating halfway, exactly for the same reasons why Nelson Mandela and Oliver Tambo rejected the apartheid constitution of South Africa. That's what we are insisting has to happen now. And if those who are ganged up in Abuja and in the various government houses, the state capitals where you have governors, all swearing to defend and uphold that instrument, the dividing line between everybody in the days ahead, the dividing line will be very much more clearly spelled out as that constitution. If you're on the side of that constitution, I tell you, you may be looking for people like me to come and stand. We have been standing in a difficult middle, holding everybody down to say, if we do just this, it won't even take 3 months to do if we want to do it now. But if we refuse to do it and we think we can do it by brigandage, like those who have been doing it since 24 years, we only wanted to connect this information to sufficient numbers of people. We wanted to build enough consensus. If anybody says it is not a good proposition, we want the alternative proposition that can address the question. You cannot hold on to my sovereignty and my economic assets and hold the right to kill me, in perpetuity, in your own hands, and you expect that I'm going to accept it because you are pointing guns at me. The sovereignties that are confiscated belong to the owners, and the Nigeria that is holding it without any intention of talking with them, going to election after election, is not going to be able to keep it there for too long. The people who enforce that iniquity, the people who swear to defend and uphold that constitution, again, it is a choice they have to make to continue to, on what do I call it, on a head-on collision with their own people. It will go down well. And so, how do we get there? Let us insist that we must go to transition now from where we are, because there are two things they may want to do: to declare, to keep the one they have already declared as president, say, oh, he has won, or to say, oh, let's go to rerun. None of the two will be acceptable to the people who are insisting that constitution cannot remain the basis. Even if they say Peter Obi is the one that has won, Peter Obi is going to have to swear to defend and uphold the constitution that injures me. Peter Obi is not in any position to change anything in that constitution. It's not even the business of National Assembly. All of them are pointing at National Assembly as where they will go and amend. We have no constitution to amend. Let us accept that we have a union dispute arising from well-known constitutional grievances from across the country. Everybody has their own grievances, and they are doing various things to reject what Nigeria is imposing on them. And